Glad you guys are here. My name is Steve Hogan. I'm the Director of Planning and Boundaries. It's an exciting title for Granite School District, and this is what I do. I'm an educator. I'm a longtime educator, teacher, administrator, former principal. I've been doing this about 10 years though, so it's given me a great opportunity to see things from a different perspective in the district. So, who has seen part of this, or like back in the spring, or even another year when you did a study? Are you kind of familiar with the process, or what we're talking about, or what we're doing? Okay, who has no idea what they're doing every night, other than me? Okay, all right, good. I'm going to go pretty quickly through this slide deck because there's a lot of slides here. If you can, wait until the end. If not, it's just killing you. Raise your hand and we'll stop and answer questions. A lot of these things are things that are in every presentation I ever do back 10 years. You can find them on our website. I can show you where to find that. However, after we're done and everybody's asked their questions, I'll still stick around if you want to, and we'll chat, and I can go back to slides, all that sort of thing. So I found out that what most people want to see is a map and some arrows and numbers, and just get right to it. What are we talking about? What are we doing? So I'll spend most of my time there and give you a little brief why we're doing what we're doing. Okay? By the way, I don't see board members yet. They oftentimes like to slink in quietly later. Board members. I didn't even see it, and they heard me say that. So, welcome. Sincerely, welcome. Chris, Kim, two of our board members there. Of course, Dr. House here. We have other principals. Raise your hand, principals, directors, other district folks. Everyone's here. By the way, before I forget, we do have translation services. Dora, raise your hand. Do you have anyone yet would need translation services? Okay, and if you see someone come in and you think they may need it, please help us. She's over here waving her arms and her hands, and she's fantastic. You'll notice it's on the bottom of the screen also, so for some people, if that helps. So we'll go to that point. Let's jump in. This is the big why. Why do we do this stuff? Why do I do it? Why do we have these meetings? Why do we have to consider boundaries and closures? It's that simple, really. The overarching goal of the population analysis studies or the committee is to recommend changes that improve opportunities, resources, and outcomes for our students. That's just another way of saying we feel like it's the right thing to do. And in this presentation, I'll explain why. It says the PAC down there, Population Analysis Committee. My job, one of my jobs, is to be the chair, the person that is in charge of that committee. That committee has about 30 people on it, directors from all over the district, all parts of the district, and their job is to advocate for their area, push back on each other, push back against me when I'm making recommendations so that we can, as a team, come to a good resolution and make good recommendations to the board, because in the end, it's the board's call, their decision on what we do. I'm not going through all these, like I said, but there's two slides full of why. When we start talking about schools, we're all familiar with, at least in the past, a lot of our schools in this district, who remembers we had schools that were too big, especially elementary schools. It's been a few years, but when I started, we had year-round schools, we had relos everywhere, on shifts, and we had 75,000 students. Now, anybody know approximately how many students we have in the district? We're pushing closer to 55,000. So 20,000 fewer students for the last about 20 years. And that's really accelerated in the last 6 or 7 years. So some of the reasons. Bottom line is some schools are too big, some can be too small. What I want you to remember about that is there's kind of a sweet spot or a pretty good spot to be in, especially for elementaries. That's mostly what we're talking about tonight is elementary schools. And it's not as much about the total enrollment or the number of students in a school, it's more about teachers per grade level. We really want to hit that minimum, if possible, 3 teachers per grade level. If we can get 4, maybe even 5, depending on the size of the building, There's some economy of scale and things that happen there. And again, I could do a whole presentation just on that, just on this subject. But talk to teachers, talk to principals and others. If you've been in that situation, go back and look at these slides. There is a good size. The last thing to remember is smaller schools do not mean smaller class sizes. Larger schools do not mean larger class sizes, for the most part. In fact, the smaller you get, once you get below a certain minimum threshold, you tend to get these big peaks and valleys in your class sizes. 27.25, that's the ratio we use, number of students per teacher. So it's a ratio, it's an average, we know that, they're not all that. But if you only have, say, 2 teachers, when you get below that 3 grade level, you oftentimes get 1 teacher that's really high and the other really low. If you can get to 3, even 4 at grade level, those classes tend to level out, average out, for a bunch of reasons. So keep that in mind. When we're talking larger schools, that does not mean just more students in every classroom. That means more teachers for that school also. Some of the things that are considered, these are some of the highlights. Right out of our policy, not everything, but current and future enrollment, what we call the FCI, or Facility Condition Index, basically the condition of the building. Oftentimes it's things you cannot see. It's not always curb appeal, but things you cannot see, but the bones of that building and outside, everywhere, the roof, the AC systems, everything. Transportation issues, safe walking routes, fiscal, monies, school district programs and their impacts, that's a big one in this study. Benefits consolidation, that's the previous 2 that we talked about. A lot of things in there. There's a process for this. Despite what some people may believe after this presentation tonight, we won't make this up as we go. There's a process. 2 things guide our process. State statute that gives us some strong deadlines and things we have to do to make sure parents and families are notified, and board policy. It's a calendar year. That infographic, snake, begins at the beginning of a calendar year, January, typically February is the official start date of it, and it goes all the way to December. So early, a decision the board makes a decision that says, I go to the board and I say, hey, we think we want to study this or this or this. They give that stamp of approval and say, yes, move forward. We have meetings like we did in the spring, and we have more meetings, and we refine it, narrow it down in the summer, back now. Let's test this. Can you guys see that dot? Okay. So there's where we are back in September with fall meetings. After this meeting, if we need to have more, I'll have as many as you want to. I'll come out to your school. We'll do whatever, just to get the word out and get all these questions answered. October, November, so I go to the board again in the next few weeks to make some more recommendations, hopefully narrow it down even more from what we have tonight. November is the first reading, or like an initial approval from the board. December board meeting is typically the final action, or hey, done deal or not. They can approve it or say, no, we're not doing this. And then everything that is approved is typically, almost always, implemented or started the next fall. So calendar year, things implemented next fall. So anything we're talking about tonight, of course, is not happening immediately, fall of 25. This is the map, if you've seen this before, is where we started. The green box represents the general area that we've been working within. There were about 18 elementaries. There are some secondary schools affected, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But mostly we're talking this area. Now I say what we started with, and also said generally. There's oftentimes a domino, a ripple effect. If you make a change in one school, sometimes it gets a little bit out of this box, if you will, or this area that we've defined for the study. And there are a couple of those tonight. In fact, I went back recently in July and requested that the board expand the study area, where that red is to the west there with Lake Ridge and Pleasant Green. What happened there was a development, and I knew this development was there, and there was a street that was started, so our boundary line was right on that street. Okay, it's going north. And those buggers came back and made a little jog in that street, and then went north about 50 feet, so, which messed up our boundary. So I went back to the board and said, because of that, we need to make an adjustment here for one street, and I'll show you a map of that in a minute. But now that's our new box or area, study area. Okay? It's pretty big. It's one of our larger studies, but there's a lot going on there. Again, by the way, I'll show you at the end, all of this information, this presentation, even the video, they want to record everything I say so they can go back and watch word for word. If I say something wrong, you'll have it. But all of this will be on video. You can go back and watch it, you can analyze, you can study these slides. These are just simply the schools. Simply the schools, the FCI that we talk about. By the way, that score is a ranking. There's a better way to say it than a score. The higher the number, from 1 to 100, we just happen to have about 100 buildings, not all schools, but 100 buildings in the district. The higher the number, the better the condition of the building. Lower the number, of course, the worse the condition of the building. Okay? The name of the school, some of the programs at that school, and those names of those programs aren't deal breakers either way. It's just more informational. And then, of course, the thing to remember up there in red, K-5. If you look up there and say, that's not how many students there are at our school now, you're right for some of you, because I'm doing this thinking in the future, because remember, like I said, everything we're talking about happens next fall when we've reconfigured, in other words, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. So I want people to see these numbers and be thinking what that will look like in next year. So those numbers represent next year basic enrollment. This is a slide I've used a couple of times. It was a big slide that we used in the July meeting. July is one of those big, I told you, state statute. It's one of those times where we kind of make a cutoff, or we had 18 schools, and at that point we came back and said, okay, we're going to narrow the focus. We like to start a study by saying everything's on the table. All schools are considered for closure, for boundary changes, you name it. Put any ideas on the table, and then we'll slowly, or quickly if we can, take some of those off and narrow the focus. This is where we stood then, and this is still really where we stand now. Which simply means, I'll interpret very quickly, the closure study. Again, that's what we're talking about. We're talking potential school closures and or boundary changes. We almost always have boundary changes when there's a closure, because then those students have to go elsewhere. Orchard and Redwood, generally straight up closure studies. DLI, dual language immersion, and specifically here Spanish / closure study. I want to be very specific here, and those 4 schools are still listed. A major component, part of this study, is about our dual language immersion, Spanish in particular, programs. We've had 2 big meetings. Anybody here come to some, I see a few familiar faces. They came to the DLI meeting, at least one last week, okay? We had 2 evening meetings last week for DLI parents specifically. There's so much happening there, and you'll see this on the map in a minute, that are happening with DLI. Depending on what happens with those DLI's decisions will determine whether there could possibly be any more school closures amongst that list, or just boundary adjustments, moving a DLI program from one place to the other. That's why that is still very important. I just put the highlight around that box because, again, as we're making these changes, it's hard to make one. It's like a Rubik's Cube. You remember that, if you're old enough? I think it's still around, right? But you make a change on one side, and it changes 4 other sides. Same way with boundary studies. It's hard to make one change without the ripple effect, the domino effect, making other changes. So that's where we're at. Questions so far? You guys remind me of that 6th grade class I used to teach. You know what the most popular answer in school is? Exactly right. That's it. What's the answer? I don't know. Okay. I'm gonna repeat that. And by the way, we have these two microphones that are ready here. I know it's kind of scary to have to stand up, but I'm just trying not to pass this microphone around so you don't have to, everybody touch the same microphone. Your question, though, was, you got the two at the top, Orchard and Redwood. What about these others at the bottom? How many of those could close? I've also, there's 6 schools listed. Number one, the decision's not made yet. If we're looking at just closures, the Orchard and Redwood are still honestly at the top of the list, if you will. That doesn't mean they're going to close either, but they're still way up there. Those 4 at the bottom, largely, what happens there largely depends on the survey. You know, we've been taking a survey, getting tons of feedback from our DLI parents, trying to find out which of the 2 options we'll go with. That largely depends on what we hear back from parents, and then what the board says, okay, let's go with one of these options or not. So, could be 2, could be 3. I'm hesitant to put a number on that. I mean, we can't close 6 schools, we know that. But 2 or 3 range? Between all 6? But see, this is always hard. This is like, if you've got kids and your child asks you something and you say maybe, that's a definite yes. Well, you said we were. No, I said maybe. Well, what I'm saying is it's possible. It's possible that 2, 3, I have a hard time seeing 4, but I just am hesitant to limit ourselves yet. I think we'll have a lot better answer to that in a few weeks when I go back to the board and make some more recommendations based on feedback we're getting from these meetings, okay? If you don't like that answer enough, come see me after and we'll try to get into some more detail, okay? This is the full map. These are the money maps. This is what I want to talk about. I'm going to go through each of these. We've just broken them down into smaller areas like that. So we'll come back to this map, but let's just go through, and I'm going to start on the left, on the west side, right up in this corner, and we're going to work our way across with blown up maps. That's the area I was talking about, Sinbad Way, right on the line of Lake Ridge and Pleasant Green, mostly new homes. And again, you see that little jog right there? That was a dirty trick. So we had that line right on that street where we thought it was going to go, and they moved it. So we're looking at that. The proposal there is to have that street, which is all really part of this new development. So the new line would go over to the back of those houses on Sinbad, and just simply those new homes, anything east of that would become part of the Lake Ridge boundary. Okay, anybody by chance live in that area? Okay. That's one area. Next, the potential, I could even call it proposed, because it's a proposal so far from the Population Analysis Committee, to orchard closure and then subsequent boundary adjustments. I think we may have cut off part of all, but I think everything is that you need to see is there. Red numbers, current enrollment, or when I say current, what it's going to be without 6th grade. Okay. So again, if you see those numbers, we can talk later, but that's pretty darn close to what they are now, and/or without 6th. Blue is after some of these changes. That's what we forecast. Okay. Starting here, this side. If you've seen some earlier maps, basically the proposal, if Orchard is closed, right down, is that 68? 6,800? Anyway. Okay. Right down the middle. I've got so many numbers and streets in my head right now from all of this, but it's almost splits east-west, Orchard right down the middle. There was an initial proposal, and it's still possible, that everything west of that dividing line was going to go to Copper Hills and everything east of it to Whittier. One of the recent proposals, changes that we're considering is this. So this top quarter, if you will, would go to Wright Elementary. The bottom quarter, or southwest corner, Copper Hills, all of this side to Whittier. There's a street that runs pretty much east-west all the way there. Questions so far? can get back. Let me try to address a few things that almost always come up, and I think will come up. One is, are there going to be buses? Orchard has been, oh, I'm sorry.
Mi pregunta es, si es que se cierra la escuela Red Rock, dijeron la otra vez que no tenían dinero para construir una nueva. Entonces, ¿qué piensan hacer con la escuela tumbada?
She's asking about Redwood Road, if that last time she heard that Redwood Road was going to be closed, and what will happen with that building? Is it going to be demolished?
I'm going to ask you to hold tight for a couple of minutes because I'm going to get to that slide. But don't let me forget to make sure we talk about buildings and Redwood. I'm absolutely, but thank you. Remember, you have to live outside of 1.5 miles away from a school to receive busing. That's not necessarily as a crow flies, and if you go to Google Earth and try to map that out yourself, it may be close, but it may not be what you think. There's a software, there's a program that does that tells us exactly what that looks like. Our transportation department runs that. I don't have transportation maps tonight, but probably by the board meeting or the next few weeks, I could have those available, okay? So will there be transportation? I do not know yet. Some of the thinking here has been, and this is why, quite frankly, the PAC said, let's do all of the side, first Copper Hills and all of the side of Whittier, where some people said, well, you know, hey, Wright could use some numbers, but that's 3500 south. And there were concerns about crossing 3500 south. That's a major intersection right there where the main cross is, with a light and a hawk, and I'm sure there would be a crossing guard if that were the case, but still a major intersection, and 3500 south is a very busy street. However, it's still on board, so it's still a consideration to have these students. I believe there's about 80 to 90 students there that would go to Wright. I'm going to guesstimate those are all walking. I could be wrong a little bit, but I'll tell you for sure, but my eyeball on this over the years says that's a walking route. Okay, this area to Copper Hills, and again, this area to Whittier. Not perfect. I can tell you now, almost any street can be dangerous, whether it's a large street, a small residential street. Some of the scariest streets we have are small residential streets without street lights, that have cars parked on the side, and kids dart in and out of them. My experience, I don't have the hard data here, but my experience is actually the larger intersections are safer for the most part because of all the lighting, street lights, stop sign, or red lights, crossing guards, all of those things that are there. People are actually more aware at intersections like that than they are driving through neighborhoods. So it can feel counterintuitive when you say, I want my kids crossing a busy street, and I get that. I've got 5, and of my 5, 3 of my 5 I would trust going 1.5 miles walking to school. 2, twins. I was worried about them getting out the front door without getting in trouble or doing something. So I get it. Absolutely there are concerns. It really is individual depending on the child. Okay, we can come back to this, but I want to get through this a little quicker. This area, I don't know. We'll talk more about DLI in this area in a minute. But one thing that is, regardless of the DLI proposal that is being proposed now, is this area for Valley Crest, in the red dotted line. So Valley Crest is considered a split feeder. This area of Valley Crest, when they leave, goes to Hunter Junior and Hunter High. Just like it says here, this area goes to Westlake and then Granger High. If this is moved, it would be approximately 90 students from Westlake to go to Hunter Junior, and then 150 from Granger High to Hunter High School. That gives Hunter High School a little relief. It's still, I think, the largest school in the state, and very close. What did I say? I'm sorry, Granger is. Are we, Tyler, you still don't know if that's the case? Are we the largest school in the state? Close? Yeah, it feels like it. Yes, let's go with that. But it's close. This is an area that's been looked at for a while, but that is still a proposal.
Do you have guesstimates of what those dotted lines roads are?
I can try to pull it up later, but I'll say it wrong. We're going to come back to her question now. Let me explain the story of the slide, and then, move that out of the way. Redwood Elementary, which their boundary is basically this, okay? You can see these diagonal lines or hash marks, I call them, represent obviously the changing areas. So this half, straight down Redwood Road, the school is here, straight down Redwood, everything to the west of that, the proposal, there's about 175 to 180 students in that area. The proposal is those students would go to Stansbury. You'll notice on these schools I have, again, the red number, which is current. If you just add those students, then there's a DLI question mark. I mean, we don't know yet, depending on what happens with the DLI. Could there be an update to that enrollment number? Absolutely, I'm sure there would be. This area, go to Wilson. It does not change the high school feeder. I don't think it changes the junior high feeder for these two areas. Correct. So this area would remain, they'll go to Wilson, but this area would remain the same junior high and high school feeder. Okay? This area, however, I call it the boot heel, just because of that, approximately 125 students. You see the note there, this area moves to Valley Junior. So this area going to Granger Elementary, and then with the rest of Granger Elementary feeds into Valley Junior in Granger. Okay?
How many kids would leave Redwood to go over to Granger? Because that's a lot of kids to invest one ways.
So all of Redwood Elementary?
No, you know how it says this area is in the purple, where the lines are?
Right.
Who lives there, but I don't see how many kids live in that area that would go over to Granger.
About 125. Yeah.
It's quite a ways down the road, it's not close. Okay.
Yeah. It's
The ones to Stanford, will they be walking or they will be bus?
I'll look at that. So this area, if you look up here, largely commercial industrial area. There's a pocket of homes up here, a little bit here, large pocket here. So we're mostly this area and kind of in the middle.
The apartments right there is way too far to walk. It will have to be a bus. And where I live is very far right now.
Right.
If they 6 minutes the bus,
Right. And again, I'll get busing maps out once we make more closer decisions of what we're going to do. But it gives you some idea. So, okay, let me come back over here.
Lo que usted está mirando ahorita, aquí, si usted se fija que no vinieron de la escuela Redwood Road muchas personas, es porque viven cerca de la escuela Redwood Road. Y si usted se fija, no tenemos los papás porque muchos no manejan. Hay muchas personas que viven en esa área que yo los he mirado que van caminando. Yo los he mirado que los niños, la gente está buscando cercas, una casa. Me han pedido a mí que les diga de un cuarto o algo, gente que está llegando de todos los lugares, ahí porque buscan esa escuela, porque está más cerca. Y si usted se fija, hoy estuve y hemos estado dando papeles para que venga la gente. Y si usted se fija, no vino nadie porque no tienen en qué venir.
And if you look around, you might notice that there are not many people from Redwood Road, and the reason is because they don't have transportation. They are looking for a school that is close for them to walk, and they have even asked me if I know of a place that they can rent, because they don't drive, they don't have cars. So for them to walk or even come to this meeting is difficult for them. or even to go to another school that is not close to them, it will be difficult.
Let me respond to that, and we can go here next, okay? One of the hardest parts about what we do, what I do in the PAC, is the realization that these are difficult decisions that have real life impacts on families. You move to an area largely for a school. Transportation, babysitting, work, routines, where grandma lives or your babysitter lives, and 10 other things, all really depend on oftentimes where your child goes to school. We feel like we've worked really hard and got a pretty good process to come up with a good, sometimes very, very good solution to these challenges. But I remind people often that there's no perfect solution. I'm not trying to set you up for an absolute, because I don't know what's going to happen here. But just know that I acknowledge everything you just said, absolutely. When I talked earlier about the PAC, the Population Analysis Committee, and those people on the PAC, it's their job, and they do really well, to advocate for our communities. So our directors, I remember in this one specifically, I got some of those same questions. Steve, do you understand the impact we could have on families? Coming from or all departments, but especially our Title I director, Ed Equity director, and those that are really tuned in to demographics and real life concerns for our students. We're aware of those, and we do try to do things to help. What I encourage you to do, and I'll say this a bunch if I can, go into I'm going to show you soon how to get into the feedback, or to give us feedback. And there's one in Spanish, all Spanish. Please make sure you put these things in writing. I can't remember all of these things, but please put them in writing. Our board members get this feedback. I just send it, I don't edit them. I send them word for word. And sometimes that's a little scary because they see some things I'd rather not see in some of this feedback. Sometimes not very nice things, but I want them to see all of that so they know how you feel. And that's why we have board members here tonight, so they don't have to rely on me going back and saying, hey, please try to understand these are very difficult situations. They're here, like they almost always are. They feel it. They know. So that's my best answer so far. And if you have other concerns, I'll address those the best we can.
Bueno, yo la verdad agradezco mucho porque yo sé que estamos en un país ajeno y agradezco que nos den la educación gratuita. Estoy muy agradecida con Dios y con ustedes. Lamentablemente esto nos pone muy tristes porque, como dijo la señora, yo me acabo de mudar hace una semana por el motivo de que la escuela quedaba cerca. Entonces sí me pone triste porque los niños no se estabilizan. Aparte de que nosotros como padres de familia no podemos estabilizarnos bien, ellos también se inestabilizan. Sería muy, muy triste que ellos vayan, porque por ejemplo en mi caso yo no tengo auto, soy madre soltera y recién estoy tratando de estabilizarme. Antes estaba en la escuela Hilser y me quedaba lejos y ahora le cambié acá y sí me entristece porque yo sé que ustedes van a hacer un excelente trabajo porque ustedes velan por los niños y o sea, es un impacto fuerte, pero espero que nuestras opiniones no afecten al bienestar de nuestros niños, porque si es por ellos, nos va a tocar hacer un sacrificio. Gracias.
First of all, I'm grateful to this country because we just came here and for the education that is offered to our kids for free. I'm very sad because I was in the hillside area and it was far from me. So I moved to this area and now they are changing boundaries, they might change boundaries. And I know that you will look out for our kids and will make the best decision, but it saddens me that it is going to affect us.
Thank you. Again, I would think say the same thing. You're right. You move to a certain area to be close to a school, and then this is proposed. And to your credit, you're here to make sure we understand that and your concerns. I joke a little bit about crowd sizes, but quite honestly, I would rather this thing be full. The more people here, the more passion, the more energy, the more I know people really care. We've had some large crowds. Last week we had 150 to 200 at Stansbury. We've had a lot at Valley Crest. We've had them full, but I appreciate your passion for that. Students going to Stansbury, Wilson, and Ranger. Part of this, I think I've got it. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the next one. Again, I can come back to these. I'm going to get through the rest of these slides quickly and we can come back. Other adjustments, you can see it's part of the same slide over here. This is that area. That arrow is coming from Redwood. This part of Walker, Olin Walker Elementary, is large, but really it's students coming from one apartment complex, Sun River. About 20 to 25 students we propose come to Wilson. And that I can tell you will be bused to Wilson. This area is a little tricky. This area, again, is currently part of Walker. About 50 students. We're proposing that this area goes to Lincoln Elementary. None of these change their secondary, their junior high or high school. There's a tricky one here, a little bit out of the ordinary. FS, right on the corner of 33rd South and I-15 right there. Family shelter, homeless shelter. We think it's coming. They've kind of built it. They're ready for it. They're doing everything they can. It may be open as early as December by Christmas. That's the hope. However, there's some final funding they're waiting for. In the meantime, we think we have more resources and capacity to help and to accommodate students, because it's a family shelter, at Wilson more so than Walker. So our proposal will be to take this little edge here and make just that corner where that is part of the Wilson boundary. That will begin, you see right there, start to see January of 2025. This is unusual because we will propose to the board that begins almost immediately, in case the shelter does open, and we have that ready to go for students that are in the shelter by January. Okay? Okay? H2O and a few others. The question was really about apartments or new residential development near the East Center, which is in the Redwood Elementary boundary, right? That's part of my job, is to track those things. I do that for the district. We've also hired a separate consultant to help us manage that and look at those things to make sure we're accounting for all that new development. Waiting for that report. We should have it back in a few months. But I've been doing this long enough, so I go to these leasing agents' offices and talk to them, and a lot depends on the type of apartment, what they call market value, or what the rent price is, bottom line, what the price is at least. We're not getting many students out of those developments. We can have a couple hundred units and sometimes only get a handful of students out of them. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing in a lot of places. We're just pricing people right out. Doesn't mean some won't come. There may be some. There is unfortunately, right in that area, 2 charter schools right there. And that's part of the bigger, that's a longer story, but there are 2 charter schools there. There's 3 in the Redwood, actually 4, but one's more of a high school, but right in the Redwood area. And so I'm very aware of those developments. I don't see significant student yield, or in other words, we could get a handful, but right now, unless something changed drastically, we're not getting many students out of those types of developments. We've covered all those changes. This is a big picture, the full map again, if you want to study it. I'm sorry for the numbers, they're hard to see, they're kind of pixelated on this version. I'll try to get a better version, but they will be on this PowerPoint. And if you go to the PowerPoint, you can zoom through it, you can zoom in, look at all those numbers. If you have questions about those numbers, of course. By the way, remember, there's another meeting tomorrow night at Hunter Junior High at 6 p.m. Same thing. I'll just put it on ditto and try to say the same thing as best I can. But same presentation, so please feel free to come tomorrow night too. So the other part of the study I was mentioning that we've had meetings about that is just honestly a very, very big part. Many schools along the corridor, 3100 South really, are struggling to maintain effective traditional classes in conjunction with DLI, dual language immersion, because their total enrollment is too small. It's a long story, but the short version is DLI has been around 15, 16, 17 years, and when most of these schools started DLI, they were larger. 500, 600, 700, sometimes larger. In a school that size, DLI can be pretty effective because you have room. Most DLI programs, most, not all, are 2 classes per grade level, and then you need a minimum of 2 traditional classes per grade level. That's 4 classrooms. Remember, we talked about having 3 minimum? What's happened, though, in the meantime, these schools have gotten smaller, and we're often seeing 2 DLI, sometimes 1, but 2 and 1 traditional class per grade level. So it goes back to that issue I talked about at the beginning of 3 teachers per grade level. When you have a program like DLI, in essence, what you're doing is running 2 schools. You're almost running 2 schools in 1 building, and it gets complicated, and quite frankly, it starts impacting the education of all students. That's why we're here. We had planned actually this year to study another part of the district, but we've heard so much from parents, administrators, a lot of constituencies that we've got to do something. We've got to do something about these DLI schools that are all bunched together. Remember, when the DLI first started, and up until this past year, in fact, they were school-based programs. They're school-based decisions, communities. A school in that community could decide, we want to start DLI Spanish or French or Chinese or whatever. And that has been the case until recently, where the board gave us the ability to make some changes or recommend some changes to these programs. Because what's happened is, here we go, the yellow circle. Again, this map is there for you to look at. Valley Crest, Monroe, Hillsdale, Stansbury. We originally were talking about Granger because they have DLI also. It was lumped 5 schools, but we dropped Granger from this part of the study, and we're focusing on those 4. It doesn't make sense, really, to have 4 of the same thing grouped too closely. As much as I love Chick-fil-A, 1 on each corner, it's probably not good business. Almost anything like that. They're too saturated, they're stealing from each other in a lot of ways. And some are more effective for different reasons. That's the area. We're talking about DLI Spanish. Yes, there's Vista Elementary down here, West Kearns Elementary, and Granger are the other 3 in this part of the valley, part of the district. But they're all down here except for Granger. So Granger, again, West Kearns and Vista-ish right over there. We're talking about just these 4. Because of that, the PAC, I asked that we form a committee of specialists, our DLI specialists, our curriculum specialists, principals that have or have been in DLI schools, to get together, come to the PAC and make a recommendation. Because they're the experts. What should we do? Should we keep all of these schools as is? Should we make some changes? That's the area. The DLI School-Based Programs Task Force was asked to consider options for addressing issues surrounding declining enrollment in schools along that 3100 South corridor that currently house DLI programs. After considering possible options, the committee was tasked with making recommendations that could be presented. They brought several options to us, and it was boiled down really to 2 options. Those 2 options here. Anybody else almost choke on smoke coming in? Every time I get smoky like this, my eyes and my throat are dry, so I'm trying not to cough and drink a lot of water. I have a Traeger, and I don't think my Traeger would even work with this smoke. There's more smoke outside than inside the grill. Option 1, discontinue or disband, stop, whatever, the DLI Dual Language Immersion Program at either Valley Crest or Monroe, one of those 2, and Hillsdale or Stansbury. In other words, go from 4 schools to 2 beginning next year and offer placement in the DLI program at the other school. So again, it has to be one of those, no longer has DLI, and one of those. And then you combine those 2 programs. And that's the first option. Again, survey data. We've got probably 150 or more surveys back so far. We're sending surveys with DLI teachers to go out at SEPs next week. The more surveys, the more feedback we can get, we think that the better our recommendations will be. Option 2, a designated DLI magnet school. Use one of those 4 schools listed on 3100 South as a designated Spanish, only Spanish, not other languages. At this school, only Spanish. Magnet school, and discontinue DLI in the other 3 schools beginning next year. Again, every student in the designated DLI school would be offered enrollment in DLI. So one of those 4 schools would become a magnet, and that means, yes, you still get about half of the day in English instruction, but it's really based on DLI Spanish. I'm sure the principals speak Spanish, the administrators, everyone there, hopefully, to be immersed in it, can do that. Remember the goal of DLI, at least in our district, especially in this area, it's really for native Spanish speakers and native English speakers, because you want that mix. We found the best results when you have about half and half, close to 50% native speakers. So they can help the native English speakers while they're in the Spanish class. And then the other half of the day, they're in regular English classes, and our native Spanish speakers are learning English, and the English speakers help there. And when kids start talking to each other, that's better than teachers, when they can just go back and forth. So it's for both, it's absolutely. Some parents worry that, hey, I don't want my child there because they won't learn English or Spanish. It really is the ideal situation for both. One of the questions about the magnet school is, okay, if let's say you live in Stansbury and Monroe is the school, or Valley Crest, it doesn't matter, pick one. Remember what I said about busing. One, we do not know if there will be transportation provided to the DLI magnet school. Whatever school it is, school A, and you live more than 1.5 miles away from school A, typically you would get transportation. Because this is a specialized program, that means there's no reimbursement. There's money involved, there always is in decisions, right? And the reality is, for almost all of our buses, the state reimburses the district for those so-called regular routes. So the state reimburses us. If it's a specialized route like this, we do not get reimbursed. So the district would incur the cost of a bunch of buses to move students to a specialized program. So to answer your question, maybe the task force thinks it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea. I think most people that say, hey, let's do DLI magnet, say what we've seen in the survey data so far is, yeah, I could probably do that if there's transportation. We go back to some of these ladies' concerns over here about transportation. Because sometimes what we've heard is, even if there is transportation, what happens though if my child's not feeling well, they need to go in late, or I need to go pick them up early for a doctor appointment, or they're sick, or there's a special meeting I need to go to. Well, that still requires your own transportation to do that. Buses don't do all of that. So I just caution that I've seen this over the years, that with transportation, that doesn't solve everyone's problem. That's not a fix-all for all issues. Those are the slides. Before we just get to general questions, the one on the left, the QR code, you can do it from there. It takes you to our website. Everything we've talked about and we'll talk about, and that website is updated often, is in that QR code. Okay? You can look at past studies. You can look at things we've done for the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 years at least, and this year's stuff. On the right, if I said that right, correctly. On the left, did I say that right? On the left is everything. This is the website. On the right, in green, takes you directly to the feedback survey. You can see, of course, submit feedback, and then also the same thing in Spanish. I took it longer than I really wanted and all that, but it's important. It's hard for me to not to cover some of these things because then you don't know what questions to ask if I don't. So, by the way, Superintendent Horsley has walked in the meantime. Thank you for being here. Another board member, Julie Jackson, is here. Others may have slipped in. Connie Burgess is over here. Other principals. So, thank you for being here. We saw Kim and Chris earlier. And without my glasses, that could be anybody. It's hard to tell. So. What I would prefer, whether it's, even if it's translation, please try to come up and use these microphones. I'm always worried about trying to repeat what you say, I'll get it wrong. This one is on, that one is on, and I'm also stressed when I have to remember who's next in line and who raised their hand first. And so if you just come up and get in line, we'll take questions. I'll stay generally as long as you want, but at least another half hour or more, and then if we'll close the official meeting, I'll sit up here and we can chat. What do you want to know? I'll do my best. I got my playlist. You can listen to that too.
So I'm one of those schools that are part of the DLI study, and I guess we were kind of expecting a little bit more closer to a plan. I'm assuming there's going to be another meeting of the proposed plan for December. Is there something scheduled yet?
Is there something more close to a plan? We're waiting to get all of the survey back. So we have a lot of it. I think maybe half, maybe a little more than that. We'll get that about another week to get that back. We'll take that survey data. Remember about surveys, and I caution people this all the time. Surveys aren't necessarily a vote, which a vote implies, you're welcome to come over here. A vote implies whoever gets the most vote wins, right? And let's get out the vote. We're in that time of year again. So what people are thinking about voting. But it's not necessarily a vote, but it is, I'd say it's influence, because you should. If you want to get people and talk to your neighbors and friends, and especially your DLI folks, and let us know what you think. What are you willing to do as a family? What sounds better to you? At the end of that survey, like any good survey, it's open-ended. What else did you not ask? What do we need to know? Are you willing to travel? No. Tell us why, or tell us what else. What are we not asking you? What do we need to know? I have a lot of data. I've been doing this a long time to understand the basics. But what I don't know and I can never know are the nuances of your neighborhoods, your lives, and things that we may not know. And the only way to know that is to get your feedback here in these meetings or in the survey. So it's critical. Believe me, we've had some good plans before, data-supported plans. But sometimes, after enough feedback, we realize, you know what? Our plan wasn't good enough. And there's some things that we need to reconsider, and we've changed. So it's critical. So to answer your question, when I go to the October 1st board meeting, first Tuesday in October, I think that's the first, I hope to have a solid plan presentation at that meeting. It really needs to be at that meeting. So that we have more time for more meetings, more feedback, to make sure that what we're proposing then, that we're getting everything. Okay?
Sí, yo también vengo representando la escuela de Duró. Soy una madre de un niño que está estudiando ahí y mi preocupación no es nada más los niños, sino qué pasaría también con los trabajadores que tienen muchos años ahí, como está aquí la señora Nancy y muchas maestras que están aquí también, porque también son personas muy importantes que han servido mucho en esa escuela. Si la señora, usted ve la señora Nancy, ella tiene, creo, más de 28 años, 26, 28 años, no estoy segura. Ella ha estado apoyándonos mucho en esa escuela y es muy buena persona con nosotros. ¿Y qué pasaría también con los maestros y el personal de Red Bull?
I'm not only here as a mother, but also my question is what will happen with all the employees at Redwood Road, for example, Nancy, that she's been working 28 years at the school and she has always helping us, and also the teachers, they are very important for us. What will happen with their jobs?
Thank you for considering that. We have talked about that in other meetings, but not tonight, and that's a big deal. Employees, we actually had a meeting last Tuesday specifically designed for our DLI teachers. But it's not just about DLI. Anytime a school closes, like I said, people are impacted. Fortunately, in our district, we're one large enough to be able to absorb impacts like that. And I'm not aware of anyone in the last 10 years, or while I've been doing studies of a boundary study of closure, where an employee has lost a job because we do not have a place for them. We're also very fortunate to have a good association that has a plan and protocols in place. Remember what I said earlier? The classes don't get larger or smaller. If you get more students, you get more teachers. So those teachers that are at Redwood, or any school potentially closing, go to another school. Do they always go to the school next to them, or one of the ones that are receiving students? Not always. That they work with human resources and whatever certification the teacher has, what that school needs. But bottom line is, there's a job. Same goes for all employees, really. When you're talking staff, classified staff, secretarial staff, you name it, all employees 100%. We just have not had that situation yet, and Ben, you can correct me if you're aware of anything. I'm not aware of anyone losing a job because we didn't have a place for them. And we do see some employees that are close to retirement and take that opportunity to say, you know, I don't want to start over and I'm going to go ahead and retire, or I want a fresh start, I may go somewhere else, do something else, but not because someone wants a job and doesn't get one. There are jobs there, and believe me, I see principals out there shaking their heads saying, we need our employees, we need to keep them. So thank you for asking that. I hope that day never comes, but so far we have not had to, we've referred to it as a RIF, reduction in force, human resources term, but we have places for our employees.
So just a quick comment, Steve mentioned that there will be a presentation at the actual board meeting. For you parents that don't know, that is an open meeting. If you want to make public comment, you have to sign up the day before, but go to that meeting. I went to the last meeting and had people asking me, why aren't there other people here from the area being studied? I'm like, I don't know. You will have someone sit by. Come sit by me, I will be there. So come to the board meeting,
I'll be
make
there.
public
Sit
comment,
down.
and that's my comment.
That's fantastic. That's a great reminder. Superintendent, can you just remind everyone, you're more of an expert here. I think everything she said was accurate. We have public meetings and we have hearings. But October, did you need to sign up ahead of time for that one?
Yeah, so really quick, there's public comment, general public comment time at every board meeting where we take action. That's usually our first board meeting of the month, on the first Tuesday of the month. And then there in November and December, when these decisions are finalized by the Board of Education, in addition to the public comment that anybody can sign up for in advance, you can also sign up that evening for the public hearing, which is a time stamped. We do it specifically at this time
Thank you. Julie?
But I just want to say, as one who votes on this, so much better if I hear from you earlier, because I know I gotta go to that meeting and vote. So I will have already tried to exhaust getting every bit of feedback I possibly can, right? So if you come to that meeting and say something, I won't have time to like look into that, right? Well, I would if you came in November, because I don't vote again until December, but the sooner that you send an email, the more helpful it is to us board members who have to vote on this. So an email, I say an email is always way better than showing up the day that we have to vote and saying what you think. Just a little
And
personal.
with that, all the comments that we're gathering here get sent to board members as well.
We read everyone.
And we publish all the comments on our website as well.
You can see all the nasty things they say to Ben or Superintendent I, or board members or whatever, but it's mostly good, it really is. And there's some great ideas in there. We get great feedback, but we need that.
I'm a parent that my kid goes to Redwood, and he has behavioral problems, and I don't have any transportation at all. If he does get suspended, I have no way to pick him up, or if he gets sick at school, there's no transportation picking him up. There's a lot of parents that don't have any transportation at Redwood at all. And I have another question too. I already talked to the principal. Would you guys host a meeting for the parents if you guys decide to close for their school?
Oh, sure. I'll host a meeting as soon as we can organize one, or even after any of those situations, sure. I can't remember, are there currently any buses at Redwood?
Yes, I live in those apartments right next to it. And that's why I walk
I
back
would
and
assume
forth.
so, because it's a large enough boundary with a lot of commercial industrial stuff there. Right, yeah. One of those hazard routes, right? Okay, and you're absolutely right. And what you're saying is true, because I've heard it almost every study. I don't doubt that whatsoever. I mean, I know it's a fact, as a former principal. I've had students that come and they're sick. They get to school and 30 minutes later, they're throwing up in the hallway. We can't get a hold of mom and dad, or we do, and they say, I don't know what to tell you, I can't come get them. And so we have that child in the sick room or somewhere in the office trying to take care of them, and it's heartbreaking. Stressful. All of those things, 10 more emotions. Thank you for that reminder. Don't hesitate. You're not going to hurt my feelings. You can come to Harvard if you need to, and that's okay.
The thing about Redwood, it is such an integral part of the community, right? You hear how people walk over to the school. People come to us with an array of situations in their life that they don't know where to turn to. And when they come to us, it feels like it doesn't feel overwhelming. It feels like we have their trust, right? Because they trust us enough to be able to tell us some of the hardest things that they're going through, for us to be able to point them in the right direction about where to go. And so, some of our family members, they need help with resources and food, and when she is talking about transportation, she can walk over to the school and be there at a moment's notice when she's needed. And she shows up every single time. But for it to be so far away, there's no money for transportation, right? It's not like you can take an Uber and get over to the school. So this is a very stressful thing for her, and that's why we were standing here for moral support for her. So the thing that I worry about is that is there going to be those identifying things when people need food, when they need resources, because now we have a food pantry at our school. And yesterday, I did 5 orders for food for people just walking in because they're like, oh, I hear that this is a possibility. And when you're talking to people and there's nothing in the fridge, right? But they have this mechanism to walk there. And sometimes they have to come back and forth because there's no car to carry what we have. And sometimes we go and we deliver it. But it isn't just about the transportation. It is about being able to connect with a community that is going to listen to them, that is going to be able to connect them with resources. And we have such a connectedness, not only with our staff, but with the community. And this is hard. I get it. But I hope that people are hearing these things because it isn't just about transportation. It is about so many other things. And I know you guys have a hard job, but so do we. And we are looking out for the almost 500 kids that are in our school and their families, not just the kids. We try to do a whole child approach to everything. So I hope that you guys are also considering that.
Amen. Absolutely. Again, I can't find anything to debate or disagree with there. I would only say that you're right. This is about much more than transportation. We're connected to schools. If you think back to your own, she asked earlier, and I'll answer this question, I can't answer your question. What happens to a school building when it is closed? Because we've closed 7. Most of the time, up to this point at least, while I've been doing it, the board doesn't want to hurry and sell a building. That's not the intent. We get a little money out of that, but we're talking $1 billion budget in the district, and it's not a game changer. If there's a reason to knock the building down, they might do that. We're not in a hurry to go sell it. If the board does decide to sell property, remember state law says that we have to give the first opportunity for that to the municipality or the city where that building is in, so that they get it for whatever their needs are. If that doesn't happen, and if the board wanted to, they could sell it. But I can tell you, if you look back on all the closures we've had, I can't think of one that's happened to in the last 7 or 8 years. But when it does, when I first started this job, I would see this passion, these emotions connected with buildings, especially because I came in just as Granite High School was closing and they were going to demolish it. I got to tell you, I was surprised at the number of tears and emotions wrapped up. That was a 100-year-old building. A lot of people in the city went to school there. So I went along like that. I think kind of cold-hearted a little bit, quite frankly, because I couldn't understand it. About 1.5 years later, I'm only in it. I grew up in Tennessee, went to school, high school in Tennessee. A friend sent me an article showing my old high school was being torn down. Sat there and started to tear up at my desk, and hurry and close the door so nobody saw me tearing up and crying on my desk in the office. And I thought, what is going on? But our lives are in these places. They're civic centers. They're the heart of our communities. It's more than it is a food pantry. It is a place to connect with other people. But there's memories there. There's so many things connected. And so those are hard. All of those things are true. And yet, sometimes, we feel like, if I go back to the first slide I showed you tonight, why do we do these things? In the end, we feel like it's going to be the best for the students and their opportunities and resources and just overall education. It sure doesn't feel like that in the beginning, we know that. Oh wait, okay. Okay, we won't watch it later.
When you hear about Redwood Elementary, as a staff and many teachers, when you hear about Redwood, most people say, oh, Redwood is a hard school. And when you come to Redwood and you work for Redwood, it's an amazing school. You fall in love with Redwood, with the community, with the parents, with the teachers, with the students, with everything. It's like everyone is close. It's a great community. And if parents need help with something, they know they can come to Redwood, and there will be help in any way that they need. If they, like Ms. Richardson said, if they need food, if they need, sometimes they can because they have nowhere else to go, or they think they don't know where to go. And we are there for them. So there is so much beyond just the study of where they will go. There is so much. It's a great community. And if you come to our school, you will see what's going on in the school. If it's behavior or if there's any other, there's so much beyond the study. There is so much. Our community is great. And like you were saying, we have built up memories in the school. But there's way more than that. So maybe you could also come and be part and see like what's in the school, because it's way too much, okay? And we have a great community. So we worry about the attendance. We worry about the busing. Our parent over here, she had anxiety. She couldn't even talk. She wanted to say so much, but she had that anxiety and she started crying behind us because she didn't know how she's gonna move on with this change. And this change will affect many, many families. So I hope that you consider beyond this study, consider what really goes on into Redwood, because like Rosario said, we have a big land, and instead of like demolishing our school, it would be great to have a new school. So I guess we were in a waiting list to have a new school in some time. I don't know where we are there, but it will be great to just, instead of thinking we're gonna get rid of it, instead just let's get a new school, okay? Because we have a great community. So if you could just consider everything else too, because we have a great community.
Perfect, thank you. Again, don't disagree, in fact, totally agree. Great community. I've not been in the last couple of weeks, but I've been in Redwood many times. Ms. Gillespie, the principal there, she and I grew up not too far from each other, maybe 30 miles as a crow flies. And so we talk about home and those kinds of things when I come in. But strong community. Great ties.
They don't have that money, and we can
doing.
And we have great teachers. But the problem is that the mobility issue. Kids are coming in and out, moving in and out. But we have great teachers, we have great people in our building, we have great students. There are many students that have been there since preschool. And, but we have a lot of students in and out all the time. But we have great people already. We have an awesome principal, an awesome assistant principal. We have a great team already. So please, just as you're doing your study, just consider everything, not just like where people are, we're gonna move people here or there, but just please consider everything that is going on. Because, we are a family. We are there for each other. So please consider that.
You're all great advocates for your school. So all of you are great advocates for your school.
Because, and I mean, in reality, you go to school, we will probably have another job or to go. But the main impact is going to be on our families and our students. And that's the hard part. Because we are more than this. We have been there, we try to be there for each other. So, but the harder is going to be families and especially when there's people, the students are close to our school, they walk to our school and then they have a really hard return. But if you're gonna send them farther away, it's gonna be even harder for them.
Thank you. Ellen, thank you.
I'm just curious, as far as the schools, if they close and they kind of do that rolling, these kids would go to this elementary and this elementary can kind of be more into these junior highs. How does that, my aim, I guess, is mainly the high school situation. So how, do we have an guesstimated idea of what the numbers look like specifically for Granger since it's kind of that next?
For Granger High School,
Yes.
the only, I think I have on the map, the only move, I believe, that impacts Granger would be what we mentioned earlier, that is that part of Valley Crest that's currently coming to Westlake and Granger, approximately 150 students. So that would then go to Hunter Junior and then Hunter High. There are some, again, some other, thanks for that reminder. There's one other, I didn't talk about a junior high issue. Let me go back to that very quickly. If I can find it. There we go. Oh, it is over there. I'm gonna do it again. By the way, Gana over there, Gana Breeze and Darcy Williams in the corner, administrative assistants in our department that you just can't do these things without these guys, and they're amazing. This one. You gotta follow me for a second because we're talking last year, this year, and next year. Last December, if you remember part of that study, there were some changes approved because of reconfiguration, where it's K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. They were approved last December of 23, but they will not be implemented or begin until next fall of 25, because we had to wait for Cypress High School to open. One of those changes was Orchard, which is currently, that feeds into Hunter Junior, correct? We submitted, and the board approved that Orchard, starting next year, would go to Matheson. So that would be a change. With this proposal here, This half, so from this line west, would still go to Matheson. This side that would go to Whittier would remain, I want to say go back, but they haven't left yet, but would remain at Hunter Junior. So that is one change, I think certainly you remember that. But I think those are, I'm gonna look at this again. That change we just talked about, this is the change we talked about that affects Hunter Junior and Hunter High. And we talked about that change, that if it goes through, those students, instead of Granite Park, would go to Valley Junior. And there are no secondary changes in this. One quick reminder, I'm seeing something here I didn't talk about. You see this number 570, I said it's close to current, but it's in the sixth grade. Well, how are they losing students and going up by that much to 720 students? One of the reasons for this recommended changes for these two is down here, in fact, just below that line, there are a couple of new developments, one in particular, a large apartment complex that we anticipate this type of complex will give us quite a few new students at Walker Elementary. So much so that we have to move some students out. Walker is one of our few buildings or few properties in the district that does not really have room for relocatable classrooms. We can't just, okay, let's figure this out for a couple of years with some reloads. We don't have space there. So, and once they're at capacity, we have to make some boundary adjustments. I think it's our smallest property, I believe, in the district. So, for a school. That's why. So you go back and look at these, you're going to say, Steve's crazy. What is he talking about? How do they lose students and go up by that much? It's for the residential development in this area mostly. This one? It's below 39th. So you got Bud Bailey. If you know where Bud Bailey is, just south of 39th, and just kind of diagonal. It's in this area. It's just like it's on Howick Street. Howick, H-O-W-I-C-K. It's called the Howick Apartments, and there are a lot of, it's a subsidized housing unit, and we'll get quite a few students from there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm Rachel Ellery, principal of Granger Elementary, and I just wanted to stand up and thank all the parents who have come and teachers who have come. I feel the love that you have for Redwood, and I know that I'm not instrumental in making this decision, but I just wanted to share my experience a little bit. I was the principal 2 years ago at Twin Peaks Elementary, which is one of the schools that went through this same process and was chosen to close. And I felt that all the things that you're saying, we felt deeply at Twin Peaks as well. So I just want you to know we understand that. And there's nothing that we value more than loyalty to school. And we know how important these schools are to our communities. I felt that, I lived that. And I saw the challenges, the struggles that families and the staff members went through, the worries that they had. But I also saw the other end of the district, and going through it, saw the receiving end of the other schools that received my students. I was so worried and worked very closely with the principals of the schools where my students went. And we collaborated on open houses and combined events so that the families could get to know and that we could keep that integrity of Twin Peaks and add it to the other schools rather than just be the forgotten people, right? We were worried that that would happen. And so as one of the principals who is leading one of the schools that could be impacted by this, I know I can speak for my colleagues at this other schools too, that we feel you and we value you and we will work with you whatever the decisions are that are made. We care about these kids and we care about these families and we care about the educators that are working in those buildings, and we will take great care to make those transitions, whatever they may be, as smooth as possible. And now seeing the flip side, Twin Peaks was an incredible community. I still love it. When you were talking about the buildings, I was like, every time I see a picture of that building, I get emotional, and I'm so grateful that the district is still taking such good care of it. But our families really are being well served in those communities. There were a lot of challenges of having such a small school that are not impacting that community anymore. So I just wanted to commit to you that we will
Ms. Lowry. Let me answer one or two things, or add one or two things, and then we'll use. Whether there are 2 schools closed, 3, or 0, let me just talk in general, something I've learned in 10 years, closings. We've worked hard. Rachel alluded to this about transitioning. When there's a school closed and we combine communities, not just students, but communities, to have a lot of transitional efforts and meetings and get-togethers and parties and celebrations and celebrate the school that's closing and all kinds of things. We have an entire team that does just that for that transition process. So whether, again, we're talking this year, next year, the year after, it doesn't make it perfect. It doesn't solve all of your problems. Just know that we're aware of that part too. Well, I'll say this one other comment about students. I couldn't do this job for this long if it was just heartache. It's difficult. What we're doing here, and I joke about this sometimes, but it's true, we're going through the 5 stages of grief in a lot of ways. And I won't go into that. I'm not a psychologist or counselor, but we're doing that because that's what this is. It's a grief process. Students are very resilient. Once they get to a new school, they tend to be pretty good. Now, I'm very aware that some students do not handle change as well, or some of our special education students or students with other challenges, that routine is everything for them, and that change is very difficult. I'm talking 95% of our students, because they're children adapt to change a lot quicker than us adults. Us adults have a hard time with any change. You close the street and you have to go a new way to work and you freak out. What am I doing? I mean, it's something that's simple, but so I was able to go and see these students after the first couple of years and making these changes and sleep at night because I saw, you know what, they're doing fine. Now the parents of those students may still be upset at me, but most of the parents, even though, are fine. But it takes us as adults longer to adapt to change. That's just a general comment. That's not to try to pat you on the back and make you feel better about any potential changes, because it probably won't in the short term. I'm just saying, in general, overall, there's some things I've learned that I want to share with you, that if it's any consolation, remember that it doesn't change anything you've told me tonight. All those things are still true.
Buenas noches. Quería hacer una pregunta con respecto a que las personas que han hablado tienen una historia sentimental más que de adaptación, porque los niños, como dice usted, se adaptan rápidamente. Y nosotros mismos tomaremos las rutas, los niños haremos amigos, y pues ellos igualmente se van a adaptar. Pero que las personas hablen en este momento, que hagamos una encuesta, que las personas que tienen una historia, sus hijos han crecido allí, todo, lo expresen aquí, ayuden en algo, va a cambiar la decisión del cierre, o simplemente es una decisión irreversible. O sea, se va a cerrar y de nada sirve que digamos todo esto. O si sirve que cada quien demos un testimonio y hagamos una encuesta, de pronto hay la posibilidad de que eso no ocurra.
She wonders if all the experiences that have been shared here will make a difference in the decision, or you already made your decision, or it's important to share their experiences and the point of view at this moment.
Sharing your experiences absolutely make a difference. Maybe it's just, I don't know, you can decide. Again, we had one board member already stand up and please encourage you to do that. That's why they are here, to not just hear about this, or even watch it later. It's different when you're here and you feel these things. Yes, it makes a difference. Has a decision been made? Absolutely not. And it's not my decision. I make a recommendation to the board. I go to board meeting, you will see me there making a recommendation representing the PAC. And the board has the very, very difficult decision, final say on these. Brutal. I do not envy the board when it comes to these.
I'm chiming in too.
Please.
You know, there was, before I was on the board, there was a vote to close the school. And, there was a recommendation made by the PAC. And then after talking to the community, the board disagreed with the PAC. So I know that this does happen, that the PAC, that the board will hear information from you that we didn't know, and it will shape our opinion. Even if it doesn't change a school closure, what it does help us understand is, oh, we gotta look out for this piece of the community. We gotta go make sure we have an answer for those questions. You're telling us what questions we haven't asked. Does that make sense? That's what we're coming to you for, is to say, what do we not know? And if we do close this school, we need to know that we need to have answers to those questions, because what we don't want is somebody to be left behind without getting the help they need, and we didn't know they needed it. So even if you don't change the mind of the board, I think you can still have a huge impact on the outcome, either way. So it's really important. Like, my children don't go to these schools, but I have to vote on it. And I am counting on you to tell me what I don't know. So we have to work together, the board and the community.
Thank you. 5 more minutes in the general meeting, and I say that because some people are thinking, I gotta go, I don't wanna leave while everybody's still here. So we'll close the meeting in about 5 minutes, and then after that, again, I'm gonna stay here, as long as you guys wanna stay here. I have keys to the building, I can close it up if Tyler's gone. So, I know, you're on pretty much 24/7.
You mentioned that they can send emails. Can you share the email? So, because you mentioned that everything that is said here, and also what he said, that sometimes is too much information, but if you have emails, you will, okay.
The one on the right
Yeah,
goes
I
directly
shouldn't
to
have said email, because that's
Okay.
a little hard. Like,
Okay.
you can send me an email, but right
Okay.
here gets it to me
Okay, thank
the same. So Steve's smarter. He knows to put a QR code.
just gonna do it longer. Again, the one on the left in the blue takes you to the general website that has all the data, the presentations, the stuff from previous years, all kinds of stuff in there. And if you're a data geek and like to geek out on that stuff, then knock yourself out. And then you can call me later and say, Steve, what the heck is that about? And we can talk about it or meet. But the one on the right in green, submit feedback in Spanish. I assume that's what it says, right? Close enough? Okay. Thank you, though, for the clarification. One more. Any more? General. Darcy?
Just wanted to point out too, this QR code is posted everywhere. As you're walking out, you can scan it.
See those by the doors, out front, that big poster out front?
By the pole where you signed in, so if your phone's not reaching it from getting it up on that big screen, you can get it a little closer somewhere else.
Yes. And if you don't know what a QR code is, ask your kids or grandkids.
I can also help with that.
Buenas tardes, yo me llamo Aaron, pero yo no quiero que cierren la escuela, yo estoy muy a gusto con mis compañeros, las profesoras, hasta con la directora me llevo, pero no quiero que se cierren la escuela porque es la Redwood, porque no quiero que se vayan muchos niños. Y nada más.
Okay, wait. What's his name? Is he a Redwood student?
Yes. So he said that he doesn't want the Redwood Road to close because of his friends, and he loves his teachers, even the principal, and he is friends with the
Wait,
principal.
he loves the principal?
Yes, he does.
You're a great kid.
So, and
he doesn't want his friends to go to other schools, and he's very happy at Redwood.
Thank you.
Y ellos hicieron la lucha por venir y vienen en un Uber porque ellos no tienen la manera de venir.
So, Mom and Aaron,
Yes.
see? They came in an Uber because they don't have transportation, so they made the effort to be here, to be here.
What grade is there in?
¿Qué grado estás?
Fourth.
Fourth. All right. My favorite grade. Right. I want to officially close the meeting. I'm staying up here. Oh wait, we have one more. While we're here, we're taking one more. She'll be the last one. How about that? Let's do that.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm a parent of 3 kids. I'm a single mom. I moved all the way from Australia to this area where I really close by here. So my parent helped me to pick up because I worked there at that time. And sometimes my job requires to stay on. I have to finish my job and I don't get time to pick up my kids. And my brother, they don't drive. And if I move to other area like close to school, I'm not gonna get the help I'm getting right now from my parents. Like they cannot move me, like it's gonna impact on them too. Hopefully, like I wish it didn't close.
Redwood? You live in Redwood also?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I have 3 kids, 12 that they go Redwood Elementary School. Yeah. So when I heard this, I have to work in 2 hours right now. I'm going to work at 9 p.m. I have 2 jobs, and I was like, I have to go and, add my kids.
You have to go back 2 jobs.
Yeah,
Going back to work.
Yeah, I'm going back right now after this. And I was like, I need to go, like, it's so important to like my kids to school to me. And hopefully, I'm wishing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, everyone. Please go to the feedback. Talk to your friend groups, post it, whatever social media you use. Encourage them to give us their insights. Again, sometimes it's what we don't know that we don't know. We need to make sure we don't miss those things. And so, was there another? Does she want to come up? Okay, look, I can't turn that down. If you need to leave, go ahead. I cannot turn that down. We're doing this. So Sumi, yeah, one more. She need translation.
Okay. Hola. Mi nombre es...
You're not more scared than I am.
Porque ya tengo amigos, ya me llevo bien con los profesores. Y en una escuela, voy a bicicleta, todo siempre lo mismo, así que no pasa nada nunca.
Ahora sí te voy a
Y también tendré que levantarme más temprano.
And she says that
It's, make sure we got a name and grade.
Amelie, ¿en qué grado vas? 4th grade.
Another 4th grader. I told you my favorite.
So she says that she already has friends and she gets along with the teachers and she rides her bike to school, and if she goes to another school she won't be able to ride her bike, and also she has to get up early.
I'm just telling you now, we're not voting on it, I'm telling you who the 2 best speakers of the night were. Over here. Thank you for coming, spread the word, I'll be up here. And I'll turn the microphone off so no one has to hear what we say.